what's up, everybody? It's the Liberal Loudmouth. So today's video is about DOGE, otherwise known as the Department of Government Efficiency. Now, it is going to be run by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm sure you've heard of it. Elon Musk and Vivek want to go through and basically gut the federal spending because they think that we spend too much money, which I find interesting that Republicans keep repeating this line over and over again, no matter what, ad nauseum, because they are the ones that spend more money. They add more money to our debt. They add more money to our deficit. This has been true for the last 4 decades of my entire life. It's like a nightmare bedtime story that they just keep reading because they're just liars. They just lie about it. Let me show you a little graph here. Let me just pull up this picture real quick. Look at this shit. Donald Trump spent twice as much as Joe Biden. In fact, Donald Trump spent more on non-COVID related items than Biden did on non-COVID and COVID related items. Those are the facts, y'all. Republicans spend more money and they go in there and spend like they're bandits, just getting what they can out of it. And then the moment a Democrat comes into office, they go, oh my God, did you see how much money they spent? This is bad. Democrats are bad. This is one of those do as we say, not as we do type deals. And the reason I bring up the fact that Republicans have been bitching about this all the time is that they've actually already created a DOGE before, except this time it was called the Grace Commission. And this was Ronald Reagan's attempt to go through and, gut wasteful spending in the government. And what happened with that? Well, they sent like 2,500 recommendations to Congress at the time. This was back in 1982, by the way. They sent like 2,500 recommendations to Congress, and almost none of it was approved. And the reason is that a lot of it was just a bunch of horse shit. Then the rest of it was things that people would have freaked out on them and voted them out over. So they were like, no, we're not going to do that. And then the rest of it was just overly complicated bullshit that would have created a mess for them to have to clean up. So they said no. So the Grace Commission was largely a failure. But Republicans and Reagan at the time is like, well, I tried to cut the debt and deficit, but they wouldn't let me. So then he went and increased the deficit himself in a large way, a huge way. In fact, Ronald Reagan increased the national debt by 186%. I think still to date, he has the largest percentage increase in our debt than any other president over the last 80 years or so. But, hey, he created the Grace Commission, and then he could turn around and say, oh, those terrible Congress people, they just wouldn't do what we asked them to do. They're terrible. And so that's largely how DOGE is going to fail as well, because keep in mind, DOGE nor the Grace Commission have any enforcement mechanism. They can't themselves unilaterally go in and say, yeah, we're cutting that, and then it gets cut. They have to go through Congress, and we're probably going to see a repeat of the Grace Commission, and then you watch, Republicans are going to say, as though damn darn Democrats wouldn't let us cut all this money. You're going to get to blame them over the next 4 years. Again, this is a story we're told every time we go to bed over the last 40 years of my life. It's getting old. However, this time, we have a president, and, largely not unlike Nixon, we have a president that doesn't give a shit about the rule of law. He doesn't care about norms. He doesn't care about the Constitution. He said that he would suspend the Constitution to do this, that, and the other. And there's this thing called impoundment. And unfortunately, it became a thing back in 1803 when Thomas Jefferson said no to $50,000 that had been earmarked by Congress to pay for gunboats to patrol the Mississippi. We'd just bought Louisiana, and Thomas Jefferson was like, guys, this is a waste of fucking money. I don't want to do that. In that case, Congress generally just agreed and moved on, and nobody said anything about it. But then fast forward to Richard Nixon, who, I'm not a crook, and then did a bunch of crooked shit. And this guy impounded $12 billion of funds that Congress had said, we're going to spend on this, like water pollution, things like that. And in fact, a lot of the times, the things that he would kill were things that would help Democratic states. And that was the sole reason that he did it. Think back to the war on drugs. Richard Nixon is the one that created this. And his own people said the reason that he created the war on drugs was to go after black people and hippies who were Democrats and that he wanted to fuck with in some way. One of the other ways he messed with Democrats was when Congress passed something that was helpful to these people, he would impound the money and say, no, we're not going to do this. And that led to, in 1974, it led to Congress finally getting sick and tired of his dumb ass and passing what's known as the Impoundment Control Act. And they said, no, we're not doing this, even though the Constitution says that we have the purse and then we tell you what to spend and then you execute those laws, even though that's there already. Since we have criminals running the government, now we have to pass an additional federal law in order to enforce this, which is crazy. But do you think Donald Trump gives a fuck about that law? Of course he doesn't. He has even said openly, listen to this clip. He has stated openly that he will use impoundment in order to do with the money what he wants to do. Take a listen.
For 200 years under our system of government, it was undisputed that the president had the constitutional power to stop unnecessary spending through what is known as impoundment. Very simply, this meant that if Congress provided more funding than was needed to run the government, the president could refuse to waste the extra funds and instead return the money to the general treasury and maybe even lower your taxes, although we did give you the biggest tax reduction in history and the biggest regulation reduction in history, two things I'm very proud of.
Now, despite Donald Trump claiming that for 200 years it was accepted that the president had this power to take money that was appropriated from Congress and to just do with it what he wanted to, that's not true. Nowhere does it say that in the Constitution, and in fact, it's very explicit that Congress has the power of the purse, and the president's role is to execute the laws, meaning the budget that is passed by Congress. That's the way it goes. That's the way it has always been. Now, some of you may think, well, he's just saying that. He's not really going to do it. That's not actually true either. He's already tried this before. Back in 2019, Donald Trump withheld like $391 million from Ukraine, trying to leverage it to force Ukraine to investigate and give him dirt on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. He used impoundment as a way to do this, by saying, yes, I know Congress passed this, but you know what? I want to get something out of it too. I want to use a foreign government to go after my political opponents, and I'm going to leverage the money that Congress already appropriated, so I'm going to use impoundment because Bill Barr told me that I could. And that's what he did. And guess what happened? He got fucking impeached for it. Now, I bring this up because Donald Trump doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about the Constitution. He doesn't respect any kind of norm whatsoever. Donald Trump will use any tool that he thinks that he can use to bypass everything, and he's relying on the Supreme Court to be stuck so far up his ass that you can't tell the difference between Clarence Thomas and Donald Trump, aside from the fact that now the legs sticking out of the ass are black. And that's the only way you know that Clarence Thomas has his head so far up Donald Trump's ass. And the entire Supreme Court may, in fact, rule in favor of this, despite the fact that the Constitution is very, very, very clear about who gets to spend the money and that the executive has to execute the laws that are passed by Congress, and that includes the money that gets appropriated by Congress. So it is unlikely that DOGE, based on history, that DOGE will be any more effective than the Grace Commission. But we may see Donald Trump yet again doing illegal shit in order to push his agenda and to proclaim that he did everything that he could, etc., 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 yada, yada, yada. And we may actually see the Supreme Court rule in his favor and make it so that the executive, the presidency, is in fact a king. Because currently, the king can break any laws that he wants to, as long as he can argue in some small way that it was part of his presidential duties, then he can break the law and he doesn't go to prison for it. And if the Supreme Court then says, well, if you disagree with the money that Congress has sent to you, you can just steal the money and spend it on whatever you want. Imagine if the Supreme Court does that. That would make Congress completely and totally impotent, and that the only person that would be in charge of anything would be the president, and in this case, Donald Trump. So what do you think? Do you think Donald Trump is going to push this to the limit? Do you think that the Supreme Court may actually rule in favor of him, turning him into a complete and total king? I don't know. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. If you liked this video or found it interesting or learned something, please hit the like button and the subscribe button to get my subscribers back up so I can grow the channel again. Guys, thank you for watching. This is the Liberal Loudmouth, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.